At its core, Hearthstone is a competitive game. You're going head to head against another opponent, playing your deck against theirs and hoping to beat them in order to climb the ranks. As such, it's natural that you want a strong deck that can consecutively win against opponents in order to climb. But those don't have to be expensive, nor do they not have to be fun. And that's what I'm going to be showcasing in today's video, one of my favourite decks that's cheap to build and a lot of fun to play. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, and today I'm going to be showing you all my Murloc Madness deck. A deck that climbs the ranks really rather well in the lower ranks. It's not stupidly competitive at the top tier, but it will start getting you through bronze, silver and gold, and possibly even higher with clever play, and you might want to modify this deck yourself a little bit. We'll talk about that as well. If you do enjoy this video, please let me know, comment down below, hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, then come join me on Discord where you can ask questions and we can talk about Hearthstone. All that said and done then, let's have a look at the deck itself. Now the Murloc Overload deck, or Murloc Madness as I like to call it, is a Shaman deck, and what really inspired this for me is one, that I happen to have the Morgul hero for Shamans, which is a Murloc, and two, I just love Murlocs in general. I love the sounds they make in the games, I love their appearances, I just love the humour and that behind them, so for me, this is just one of those decks that even if I lose with it, I had a lot of fun just because I get to hear the gurgling and wailing of Murlocs, which is just brilliant. Obviously, if you don't have Morgul, you can just go for something like Thrall. Any Shaman hero will of course do, it doesn't change anything other than looks. Now the aim of this deck is essentially just to create a voracious swarming horde of Murlocs gurgling and rampaging across the battlefield. There are a couple of win conditions you can aim for, but you'll often find that just by sheer force of numbers you can batter your opponent into oblivion even before that. Now, like with any good deck building, we want a load of low-cost cards that we can get out early in the game, ramping up in our mana to some higher-cost ones. But unlike a lot of decks out there, we don't need many big cards, because what we're going to be doing is turning a lot of our smaller cards into much scarier things. The aim of the game mainly is to keep a Murloc on the board at all times. You are ramping up by the number of Murlocs. Everything in this deck pretty much triggers off Murlocs. So if you don't have a Murloc, you can kind of have to start the ramp again. That's where our two one-cost minions come into play, the Murloc Tidecaller and the Spawnpool Forager, and you do really want to try to mulligan to get at least one of these in your starting hand. Ultimately, it's not a train smash. If you don't, you might get them on turn 2, for example, but really you do want these early on. The Tidecaller and the Forager, you'll notice they don't trigger off other Murlocs per se, they don't need a Murloc already on the board. The Tidecaller gives you +1 attack every time you play another Murloc, and it's a 1/2, which means it's immune to some of the cheaper rush early on in the game. Spawnpool Forager, on the other hand, it's a 1/2, when it dies, it summons another Murloc in its place, a 1/1 Tinyfin. This means that even if your opponent does kill it early in the game, you can then you've still got a Murloc on the board to start triggering off. And if we go a little bit further down, you'll see that this is what I mean. Like, a lot of these have battle cries triggering off Murlocs. If we look at the Lushwater Murcenary, spelt incorrectly purposefully with the MU, if you control a Murloc, gain +1/+1. It's a 2/2. It's a 2-mana creature that will normally come out as a 3/2, but in this deck will come out as a 4/3. That is a big hitter. The Lushwater Scout is one of the rare examples of something that doesn't require a Murloc already on the board, and if you're playing a train of Murlocs, this is usually one you want to get out first, because when you summon another Murloc, this card gives that creature +1 attack and rush, so it can attack minions on the turn it arrives. So if you had 4 mana and you had these 2 cards in your hand, play the Lushwater Scout first, then when the Lushwater Mercenary comes out, it's not going to be a 4/3 triggering off, it's actually going to be a 5/3 with rush, thanks to the Lushwater Scout. We then have things like a South Coast Chieftain, deal 2 damage, a little bit of removal here. If your opponent has some creatures that are a little bit too big for you, you can hit it with 2 damage, or if it's early in the game and there's nothing else out, deal that 2 damage to your opponent and start really pushing their health down and putting the pressure on. The Tinyfin's Caravan is a bit of an unusual one in that it's not a Murloc, but at the start of your turn, if it's still alive, you get to draw one. Again, this is an ideal card to have in your starting hand because you can go from something like a Murloc Tidecaller or a Spawnpool Forager into a Tinyfin Caravan and start drawing Murlocs early on. Ultimately, if you don't have any of these in your starting hand, but you do have one of the Caravans, that's pretty good in itself. It's a 1/3, which makes it a little bit tougher to remove early on, and you should get to draw a couple of Murlocs out of it. There are a couple of other cards that have replaced this in other people's decks, where it's just search for a Murloc or draw a Murloc, but I like the fact that this provides a distraction to your opponent because they want to get rid of it, and if they don't, it just scales really, really well. Now, before we go on to the 3 cost, let's talk about the Amalgam of the Deep and Firemancer Flurgl. Now, Firemancer Flurgl it's a cheap card, it's only 2 cost, but you don't really want to play this early. This is a card you want to play when you have a chain of Murlocs in your hand to go down. You play this guy, and then every time you play a Murloc with him on the board, it deals 1 damage to all enemies, minions, and the other player. This is great for board wipe. If you have this guy down and your opponent's got a load of, say, 2/2s or things like that, you start playing other Murlocs and it will just burn the entire board clear for you. Try and hold on to this, and if it's in your opening hand, it's probably a good idea to get rid of it. The Amalgam of the Deep, on the other hand, is a really useful card, especially early on in the game. It's a 2/3 for 2 mana, and it has the battle cry, choose a friendly minion, discover a minion of the same type. So obviously you're going to play this with a Murloc on the board, and it's going to allow you to discover another Murloc to add to your hand. It should be noted that because the Amalgam of the Deep is an all creature, then other Murlocs that say, you know, if you have a Murloc do this or give your Murlocs that, it will trigger on those. However, the point to note here is if you have an Amalgam of the Deep on the board and you play a second Amalgam of the Deep, it's not going to work very effectively because instead of searching for a Murloc, it will just discover any creature because it's using that all tag. It's kind of one of those things where this is useful to have on the board, but you don't want to use another Amalgam of the Deep on it. That is a big no-no. As we come into the 3 costs, we have the Clownfish, and this is one of my favourite cards, not just because of its appearance, but because of its ability. Your next 2 Murlocs cost 2 less. It can be tempting, and sometimes a good idea, on turn 3 to play one of these, and then drop a couple of 2 costs for free. That can be pretty scary. I also like to just drop it at the end of a turn, so that next turn, my first couple of Murlocs are 2 cheaper each, and it does trigger off itself. So if you've got 2 Clownfish, you can play the first one for 3 mana, the second one for 1 mana, and then your next 2 Murlocs are cheaper as well. The Coldlight Seer is an end of chain card. Basically, if you've got a chain of Murlocs you're trying to get out of your hand, put this one down last because it will give all of the ones you've just played, plus whatever is on the board, an additional +2 health. Very useful if your opponent has a lot of removal. If you're looking at mages and warlocks and things that can damage everything on the board, getting one of these out early can make your Murlocs that little bit harder to get rid of. Coming down a little bit further is the opposite side of that, the Murloc Warleader. This gives all of your other Murlocs +2 attack. It's only a 3/3 creature for 3, but that +2 attack is absolutely key to what this deck can do. If you pull one of these out, it gives all of your other Murlocs +2/+2, so pull this out before you attack so that they are stronger when they do so. You should note it doesn't affect itself, and being only 3 health, it is quite easy to get rid of. So again, be prepared to use a Coldlight Seer to give it a bit of extra oomph. The final 3 cost creature is Cookie the Cook, a legendary. We had 1 legendary slot basically left over in this after the rest of it, and this just seemed to be a good idea. Lifesteal, 2/3 for 3 mana. And when it dies, which inevitably it does, for some reason people love killing Cookie off quickly, he gives you a 2/3 Stirring Rod with Lifesteal, so you get a weapon that you can attack with instead of just having the creature. Even on the turn that he dies, for example, if something kills him quickly, that you've got that weapon straight away there if you triggered a trap or whatever. Very, very useful, especially towards sort of the middle of the game, where you can start actually using that lifesteal effectively. Don't bring him down early, it's pointless to be using lifesteal stuff if you are at high health. Then on the spells on 3, we have Nofin Can Stop Us. Give your minions +1/+1, give your Murlocs an extra +1/+1. I shouldn't need to explain why this card is in the deck, should I? It's giving +2/+2 to every single creature that exists in this deck for 3 mana. Again, if you've got a nice chain of Murlocs on the board, you might look at things and see that, they've got a few creatures around, some of which are quite big, but they're on, say, 16 or 17 health, and you're going, well, I've only got 4 Murlocs and I can only do 12 damage. Then you play Nofin Can Stop Us, and you just steamroll past everything. Also useful, again, for that survivability if you're going up against someone who's got a bit of wipe. Tidelost Buccaneer is a Burrower, is our first 4-cost card, and this is absolutely one of my favourite cards in this deck. It's a 4/4 for 4, which on its own is a little bit kind of okay. It could be better than that, but that battle cry is absolutely insanely good. Basically, you dredge. You get 3 cards from your deck, and you get to put one on the top of your deck. And if that card that you choose is a Murloc, you get to summon a 2/2 copy of it. Note that this will not trigger battle cries, but it will trigger things like the Murloc Warleaders +2 attack. Yes, it's a 2/2 copy of the creature, but all of your creatures already on the board, including the Tidelost Burrower, now get that +2 attack, and you know that the Murloc Warleader, the actual card, is now sitting on the top of your deck, ready to draw next turn. That is a really good play, but again, don't be caught off by things like the Coldlight Seer and its Battle Cry, because Battle Cries will not trigger from the Tidelost Burrower. All you will have is a 2/2 Coldlight Seer that has done nothing, and, well, okay, admittedly the actual Coldlight Seer will be on the top of the deck, but don't expect that Battle Cry to trigger. At 5 costs, we have a Gorloc Ravager. These, again, are really useful towards the middle of the game. They allow you to draw 3 Murlocs, which just fills your hand nicely and allows you to start building some of those chains. Bloodlust, of course, this is similar to the Nofin Can Stop Us, gives all of your minions +3 attack this turn. Again, you may be looking at a whole pile of Murlocs on your side of the table and thinking, I can't quite kill him. This is just insanely good. For a moment, let's pause and imagine you've got 7 Murlocs on the table. Imagine that they've, for some reason, they've all just got 1 attack. That's never going to happen, but if they just had 1 attack, you'd normally be doing 7 damage to your opponent. With this played, you're now going to be doing 28 damage. That is the strength of this deck, and it's often the win condition, as you'll see. As you get a board full of Murlocs, you play that Bloodlust, and you can just rampage over your opponent. The last one to talk about here is Bru'kan of the Elements. This is not a Murloc, and it's the only card in the deck that has nothing to do with Murlocs. What makes this so ridiculous is his summon. So this is one of those cards that replaces your hero, gives you a new ability and 5 armor on summoning. 8 mana to do it, so it's fairly sort of mid to late game at this point. You get 5 armor and then the ability to summon 2 elements. Now, the 2 elements that you get to summon for free will be things like, there's one of them that deals 6 damage directly to your opponent. That can sometimes be enough to win a game. There's one that deals a load of damage to all of the enemy minions, which can be a really useful board wipe in a pinch. There's one that heals up your side if you've taken a bit of damage and your opponent is trying to board wipe. And then once you've chosen 2 of these to do, you can't do the same one twice, sadly. Once you've chosen 2 of these to do, every turn your totem ability for a Shaman is instead replaced with Command the Elements, where you get to have one of those on call. And it will flip. So you might see that this turn you've got the one that is deal 6 damage to your opponent, then at the end of your turn it'll flip and become something else, and every time your turn begins you have a new random one of these. It's slightly random, but they are usually very powerful. The heal one doesn't come into much play in this particular deck, but the deal 6 and the wipe the board of enemy minions ones are both incredibly useful. Now, there are some changes you can do. I have seen people play a deck similar to this where they've put Bran Bronzebeard in order for Battle Cries to trigger twice, because that can be incredibly powerful, but I just personally don't think there are enough Battle Cries in this deck to really do it. I mean, Amalgam of the Deep doubling it to get 2 minions, kind of cool. Getting +2/+2 on a Lushwater Murcenary, it's not really game-changing. Dealing 4 damage with a South Coast Chieftain can be nice in a pinch, but it's fairly niche. The Clownfish, again, getting 4 Murlocs for cheaper cost. Giving +4 health to all your Murlocs, I just don't see this as being a deck that really uses a Battle Cry that much, and I'd rather be trying to pull out more Murlocs, because I can just have more of a board presence that way, and it's hard to get that 1 card out of 30, but you might decide that's something you want to try. I've also seen people running 2 Bloodlusts. I did find that I was getting the Bloodlust a bit too frequently at that point and not really good positions to use it in, because this is a fast deck. You want to be hitting hard and fast early. 5 mana is useful, but it means you're not calling out anything if things have been replaced, and having a Bloodlust in your hand when you really need more creatures on the board is just heartbreaking. This is where Cookie the Cook came in. I did have 2 Bloodlusts, but I swapped out for Cookie. Again, you might decide that actually the 2 Bloodlusts works better for you. Anyway, that's the deck and its makeup. I will put a copy into the description of this video, which you can just copy onto your clipboard, post into game. That works both on mobile and on PC, and it'll allow you to build this deck and see how you want to change things. But it's all very well and good me talking about this and saying how it works. Let's actually see it in action. So here we go with a nice little matchup of Shaman versus Shaman, and I've got a pretty solid starting hand here. A Murloc Tidecaller to play on turn 1, the Tinyfin's Caravan for turn 2, and a Lushwater Scout for future runs, and a Tidecaller just in case the first one gets destroyed. This is a nice cheap starting hand. You can see I'm holding on to everything here. There's no need to mulligan any of that, I don't think. You might mulligan one of the Tidecallers, but I think it's okay as it is there. And a Clownfish, really nice as well to get early in the game. Now, because it's a Shaman and they don't have much early removal, I've gone straight using the coin to get the Caravan out. I don't think he can get rid of this on turn 1, which means I'm guaranteed 2 Murlocs, and even if he can, it's going to be spending a lot of mana for him to do so. No, he's going to bring out a random totem, he gets the tanking one, and I get 2 Murlocs at the start of my turn. Tidelost Burrower for turn 4, and another Caravan. Ooh, that's tempting, yes. Let's do that and give him something real to try and handle. I'm going to be drawing 3 cards next turn, 2 guaranteed Murlocs, one that could be a spell or a Murloc. We'll see what happens, obviously. In his turn, he's going to be looking at a way to try and get rid of these. So yeah, straight away add 3 1/1 Piranhas. He's going to summon these, I bet, with Rush, because these are good at quick removal. Yep, there we are, and the second one's going to come out giving the first one +1 attack. That's enough to get rid of one of the Caravans, but not both of them. It's also stalled him for a turn. It's a lot of effort just to get rid of a card to stop me drawing. Now, I've got a good selection of Murlocs in my hand. I need to decide really what I'm going to do here. There's a lot of cheap stuff. I've got the Clownfish to make things even stronger. I can start pulling up some of the nice chains as well. Yeah, let's start with that. We'll put the Lushwater Scout out so that anything I play now is also going to get Rush and +1/+1. There we are, which now gives me a 2/2 Tidecaller to deal with. Let's get rid of that with the Tinyfin. Ultimately, I could have done that with the Tidecaller rather than the Caravan. That would allow the Tinyfin to go and attack directly. Minor mistake there, but it's only 1 damage lost. Oh, 4 mana to pull out 2 2/3 taunts. It's a nice stalling tactic, but it's not going to get him very far at this point. Aha, and Bru'kan is now in my hand. I've got my win condition sitting around already. Now here I'm playing the Burrower and hoping it's not there for the Warcooler. So instead we are going to take this one. We're going to take the Scout because it's going to give the bonus in case anyone destroys the other Scout. And as he says, yeah, there's a lot of power going on there, so we can kill off some of these without losing too much ourselves. Do a little bit of splash damage across to the enemy. His turn, let's see what's happening. That Burrow was a little bit lower on health than I might like it to be. I've got a couple of 2/2s. If he can do a rush there, a burn there, that could take out those. But no, what he's going to do is he's going to pull out a Null. Is he going to go for the Caravan? Yeah, he is. Null with Rush just to kill a Caravan. I'm not sure that's the one I would have killed personally, but ultimately, yeah, it does slow my draw down a bit. Ultimately, you've got to be careful that Caravan doesn't stick around too long. Nothing worse than having a full hand of cards and that thing is just filling you out further and burning cards that won't fit in your hand. Okay, we've got another Lushwater Scout from the Dredge from last turn. Not ideal, but yeah, let's play it maybe and start another chain. Again, it means he's got 3 of those to deal with if he wants to do anything else. We're going to pull the Tidecaller out. It gets a couple of nice pluses there. It's also got Rush, and anything else that I could play would help there as well. But I'm hoping for the Taunt. The Taunt totem does not come out, so we're just going to kill the creature and smash through with what we can do. Everything heals up, but there was nothing to heal, no damage on my creatures. Now you can see at this point I'm still sitting on 30 health. He is basically on a back foot trying to do some, whatever he can. And there I get super lucky. He turns all of my creatures into things that are 1 cost cheaper. And amazingly, that gives me a Tinyfin Murloc, which still allows me to continue the whole Murloc chain. I am astonished he didn't pick up on that and destroy it. So, right, let's do a little bit of removal and start hitting some stuff. So we're going to bring down the Forager. That's going to do 1 damage to everything, thanks to Flurgl. Little bit of damage, gets rid of the totem and deals some to him. We are then going to play the Clownfish. Now you can see I don't have the mana to play anything else this turn. That's quite alright. It's still going to be 2 cheaper next turn when it comes back around. Decent board. Okay, there's a couple of non-Murlocs there. I would kind of hope he goes for those first. One of them at least is the zombie that is ridiculously irritating, so I've got that on my side at least. Oh boy, and here come all of those Piranha Swarmers. Remember, every Piranha Swarmer that you summon gives all of the others a higher amount of damage. Bit of a waste of the 3-cost one, but there we go, the 3-attack one. But he's got enough. He's going to get rid of the Clownfish, but that is not going to stop the fact that my next 2 Murlocs are still going to be 2-cost cheaper. And he gets rid of the Tinyfin. I get why he didn't go for the really annoying zombie, because it's just going to come back and create more problems, right? Okay. Oh, we've still got something left in this turn. Freeze a minion and draw a card. Okay, not sure. I guess you want the card draw. Yes, you want the card draw. Now here we have the Gorloc, and it's 2-cost cheaper. It's going to allow me to draw 3 Murlocs, and the first one of these I play will also be 2-cost cheaper, thanks to the Clownfish last turn. I'm going to play another Clownfish, 2-cost cheaper, making my next 2 even cheaper. And let's try and clear some board space. Nope. Not going to work, but at least we've cleared off the enemy. What should I summon? It's really annoying not having that Scout, because the additional +1s at this point would be really nice. Cookie, I'm not sure why I'm playing that at this point, in honesty, but hey, I suppose it's a Murloc down with a decent bit of health, and if he does decide to kill it because it looks scary, because it's a lifesteal, a lot of people look at a lifesteal minion and decide to get rid of it really quickly, because obviously at the moment, if he attacks it and there is no damage, and it deals damage back and it lifesteals, I'm not getting any benefit. Oh, the Sea Giant's quite nasty though. That's an 8/8 creature that's going to be a bit tricky to deal with, but I do have Bru'kan coming soon, and oh my goodness, 2 red herrings with the taunt plus a load of stealthed creatures. That was quite a lucky thing for him. Okay, but let's see what we can do this turn. Let's try and, again, get a bit of space out here. Let's draw some more Murlocs and see if we get anything interesting. I've got the one that deals a couple of damage. Oh, I've got the Warleader. The Warleader's a nice thing to bring out here, because that's going to give everything additional damage. Hopefully help me break through those 2 Taunters, because I need to get those down nice and quickly. There we go. I don't mind Clownfish taking some damage. Doing a quick bit of math to work out how I can swing this. That goes down nicely. I take 3 damage, of course, but I heal up 2 of it myself, thanks to the lifesteal on the weapon. Not quite enough to kill that second red herring, but okay. Okay, that could have been worse. We've got a little bit of board clear going on there. Slowly bringing those down. And he's bringing on a couple of more elementals. He's going to try and clear out some of the Murlocs from my board. I think at this point he's realised he needs to be dealing with these Murlocs sooner rather than later. Okay. There we are. The Clownfish is now down as well. The Stealth Nixia. It's 4 damage to it, leaving it with 2 health. Yep, this is kind of painful, but... Even if he kills the spawn pool, at least it's going to bring another one back. Yeah, he's realised he needs to kill the Murlocs, and he's going to take all of those out, forcing me to start the run again. This will happen sometimes. This will just happen sometimes, that you end up having to restart a run. I've got no Murlocs to proc off, so now's probably actually a decent time to go for Bru'kan, because we've got a nice heavy amount of damage across there. So let's have a look. We've got the deals 2 damage to all enemy minions. Boom. And 6 damage to the enemy hero, I think, is probably the best one at this point. There we go, down to 12 health. That's cleared most of the board quite nicely. He's got no taunt anymore as well, so I can start pulling things down. Probably should have gone for him rather than the creature, but at least it's some board clear. It means anything he plays either needs to be rush or it's not going to do anything, and oh, nice. Bru'kan's ability next turn is the deal 6 damage one. All I need to do is get him down by 6 health and then play that, and we will be good. I'm not sure I can do it next turn, but there's some taunts. A couple of taunts, and he's going to summon a totem and make it more expensive. Not one of the best ones that could have been, but you don't always luck out, I guess. Right, let's see. Those taunts aren't necessarily a problem, but let's do that 6 damage at least, because that gets him right the way down to 6. That is going to be having him nice and scared. I'm still sitting on 30 health. I've then got 2 shield as well, 2 armor, and I've got a lifesteal weapon that I can hold on to. Nothing overly great there. I don't get to summon another Murloc, but I can dredge knowing that that is on the top. Deal 2 damage to a creature. Doesn't really matter at this point which. The taunts could go, but I'd rather get rid of that so that it's less damage coming my way next turn. Not that I'm overly low on health. We'll see though. 2 taunts and a 3/4 that I think freezes as well. And then Glug the Gulper comes out. Oof. That could be problematic because that thing gets stronger as friendly creatures die, and I have to kill all 4 of those taunts first, meaning the 3/5 is going to end up as strong as basically a 3/5 plus a 2/3, a 2/3, a 2/2, and a 2/2. As you can see there, he's lost one of his creatures. He doesn't want to get rid of the taunts, though, I don't think. Maybe? No, he's going to. It dies, and the Gulper gets bigger. Yeah, at this point, I would just, if I were him, be attacking with everything. He's on 6 health, though. I've got a Bloodlust coming through. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but we'll see. And next turn, my only thing is to deal 2 damage. So actually, I've already figured out what I'm going to do next turn. He's got 2 taunts, both with 2 health, and those are stopping me attacking, right? So first of all... Oh, no, it's not the deal 2 damage. It's the heal everything. Oh, that's disappointing. Okay, well, we're going to attack and get rid of one of those at least. Again, no damage to me, because it deals 2 damage to me, and I would then lifesteal 2 up. I do lose the armor, but oh well. Let's bring down some creatures. He cannot handle all of these this turn, at least. Unless he does some serious stuff. It's a nasty bit of 14 damage coming through to me, plus 3 from the thing itself. Let's just heal, so that's done. Should never really do that in case your opponent has secrets or things that are like if your opponent uses all their mana in a turn, but I know he hasn't, so it's just Now I've got the one that deals 2 damage to everything on the board. Not overly useful, if I'm being completely frank, on the account of that's a 14-19 creature. Taking it to 14-17 doesn't really help. Summon some 2/2s, and another taunt. Well, at least I know I can get rid of that taunter using the 2 damage to everything. That's quite nice, at least. And the chisel, but he can't do anything with it because he doesn't have board space. If he attacks now, he's going to summon one of his basic totems, but there's no space for it on the board. Okay, taking out a creature. I would not have expected that at all. He's going to attack me. As I said, the totem can't summon, the weapon still loses durability, it's 1 point of damage, and he buffs up thanks to that creature. I'm not actually sure what that creature is, but hey, let's board wipe with that deal 2 damage to everything, and oh no, his creature is super powerful at 29-30. If only I didn't have Bloodlust in my hand and could just ignore it, because quite frankly, it's not a taunter. And there we go. That's game. And there we go, the Murloc Madness in action. Hopefully that's given you an idea of how this card there. And there we go, the Murloc Madness deck in action. A nice, concise victory there. Very, very overwhelming victory. He pulled out some nasty stuff, though, towards the end. Not sure I would have been able to deal with that had we not ripped him apart in the early turns by basically rushing him down. And that is absolutely what you're going to need to do with this deck. So if you do decide to modify it, just be aware of that. It is worth noting, as I was watching, that there's one other card that may be worth including, courtesy of the latest March of the Lich King expansion, which is Rotgill. Ultimately, I didn't mean to add that to my deck, Rotgill himself is a Murloc. Again, his battle cry is that he gives all other minions Death Rattle, give your minions +1/+1. So you get him out onto the board, all of your other minions now have Death Rattle, giving everything else +1/+1, which means as he starts to kill other creatures, as your opponent starts to kill some of your Murlocs, they all start to get more powerful. If he kills one of your Murlocs, all of your other Murlocs get +1/+1. If he kills another one, then all the survivors get another +1/+1, and so on this goes. It makes some of them harder to kill, and it means they swing for some really heavy damage. Looking at the Gulper made me think of this one. It's certainly something you could include in there. It's a Murloc, so you do have the ability to draw it. It's worth noting that the Amalgam of the Deep can actually discover this, even though it's not in the deck. I've had that happen a couple of times. Some people prefer to use the Bloodlust. You might take out the Bloodlust and put in the Rockgill. Anyway, folks, if you do give this deck a go, let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear what you think of this deck, if you enjoy it, if you have fun with it, if you start climbing. What do you think its biggest weaknesses are? How would you modify the deck? Let me know in the comment section down below, or come and find me on Discord. Otherwise, folks, happy sailing, and see you all in Azeroth.